arrest involved an offender who made a series of mistakes that made it possible for him to be identified. My concern
Allegedly.
with the use of existing law enforcement tools, we're not catching the truly sophisticated, the most high-risk organized criminal offenders. Through our task force, one of the things that we're doing is exploring new techniques, including clustering Bitcoin transactions to identify patterns. And we hope to learn from the techniques that were utilized by law enforcement to penetrate freedom hosting. For the future, the pace of innovation will quicken, there will be new technologies, and the intensity of the effort to achieve total internet anonymity will increase. You asked, what can Congress do? I think there are four things. First, you can ensure that existing law and regulation focusing on the point at which virtual currencies are being exchanged for conventional currencies are used. Secondly, you can press for global cooperation. Digital economy funds flow globally, network to network, not nation to nation. This is a problem that the U.S. government cannot solve alone. Thirdly, you can ensure that the response of government to this fragile, emerging, high-risk but high-reward area is not so draconian that the effect is simply to push these new enterprises out of the United States into countries where there's little or no regulation. And finally, you can help us address the core challenge, internet anonymity. For all of its importance in protecting political dissidents, journalists, and others, we are very concerned.
Oh, we are very much rebuffering.
Uh-oh.
Rebuffering.
Are we broadcasting now?
We are live. No one's probably watching, but I'm also not sure on the sound. Can you hear the hearing?
I can.
Unless they make a mistake. 3 years ago, the then Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, in her remarks on a free internet said, on the one hand, anonymity protects exploitation of children. On the other hand, anonymity protects the free expression of opposition to repressive governments. She added we should err on the side of openness while recognizing there are going to be exceptions. That's the challenge, Mr. Chairman, is to determine how anonymous the internet can be from the perspective of government and law enforcement around the world. We feel that absolute internet anonymity is a prescription for catastrophe.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Very good testimony. Mr. Merck, welcome.
Good afternoon, Chairman Carper. I am pleased to have the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Patrick Merck. I'm General Counsel for the Bitcoin Foundation. I'm a founding member of the Bitcoin Foundation, and I have been an executive in legal and business development for a number of digital currency companies. Additionally,
I'm skeptical of him because he's a lawyer.
Foundation, a fledgling charitable organization for the Bitcoin.
I've quoted him several times.
The Bitcoin Foundation is a member-driven nonprofit representing a global constituency of business and individuals contributing to the overall Bitcoin ecosystem. Our membership is comprised of many of the top companies, entrepreneurs, and technologists working to make Bitcoin a success. The Foundation's mission is to promote, protect, and standardize the use of distributed, decentralized currencies and to free people to transact on their own terms in the global economy. Having said that, there is no Bitcoin company that manages or controls the software or its operation. The software is built and maintained by a community of volunteer open source software engineers and a distributed network of transaction processing, often referred to as mining. At its most basic level, Bitcoin is an internet protocol, L for money. The Bitcoin protocol operates a decentralized store of value and an open and transparent payment network that is secure, efficient, and low cost. The Bitcoin network can operate without any third-party intermediaries and is a highly innovative global financial system unto itself. In the near future, the Bitcoin protocol will also facilitate advanced payment services, and experiments are currently underway to provide additional non-financial services like property management and identity verification. Open and participatory systems like Bitcoin will produce many economic and social benefits. These systems can reduce exploitation of vulnerable populations the world over and here in the U.S. by providing a safe and private store of wealth in addition to a global transaction network that cannot be corrupted or abused by those who would seek to exploit or harm others. Financial exclusion is a U.S. problem. It is not just a problem for the global South. There is a rising tide of unbanked and underbanked borders. This is important because access to financial services directly correlates to increased dignity, liberty, and self-determination. Bitcoin can help move people trapped in a cash-based informal economy into a globally connected digital economy.
Woohoo!
At the same time, we acknowledge that, like any technology, there is a potential for abuse of this system. Bitcoin can be used for illicit purposes, and the law enforcement community may help new methodologies for interdicting and investigating criminal activity on the network. This does not mean that it will be any harder to prevent the misuse of the Bitcoin network than existing financial systems.
Yes.
As we heard in earlier testimony, in Bitcoin's short history, law enforcement and regulatory agencies have had a string of notable successes already. Rather than belabor the overwrought headlines about misuse of Bitcoin in the digital economy, we should be congratulating the law enforcement community on their hard work and skill in adapting investigative techniques to an increasingly digital and openly networked world. Keeping the Bitcoin network safe is all of our responsibility, and industry-led efforts are underway to help prevent abuse. Like you, Mr. Chairman, we are looking beyond the Silk Road. When the alleged operator of that black market website was arrested, the markets expressed relief and optimism with a long and sustained rally in the price of Bitcoin. Decentralized currencies like Bitcoin have...
That was already rallying anyway.
...currency systems.
The rally also might be due to Bitcoin China.
Yeah, I think it's presumptuous to attribute the rise in Bitcoin to the capture of Dread Pirate Roberts.
They said the same thing after they claimed that the market crashed after 9/11, and it didn't actually.
You got the bad guy away.
Because of this open
That's why it's doing so well.
Future, need to consider
We should be congratulating law enforcement, he says. This guy talks like a lawyer.
The blockchain, which is Bitcoin's public ledger system, may be so revealing that the larger problem with Bitcoin is not anonymity for criminals, but the difficulty law-abiding people have maintaining their own privacy. Bitcoin is not some magical cloaking device that simply allows criminals free reign.
That's a Star Trek reference there.
Unique or unsolvable threat to law enforcement and regulatory community. The use of Bitcoin is not unregulated. In fact, Bitcoin service providers operate in heavily regulated business environments with deeply entrenched competitors. For these potential competitors, be they banks, payment networks, financial service companies, Bitcoin also is an opportunity for them to start innovating again. These institutions already have a deep understanding of the controls and risk management necessary to safely handle Bitcoin transactions for consumer Bitcoin accounts. Instead, what we've seen is a chilling effect through the banking industry as Bitcoin companies try and gain bank accounts. The United States has a strong interest in maintaining its place as a global leader in developing cutting-edge technology and spreading individual freedom and liberty around the world.
Where does this guy live?
Driver of
Right?
job creation and economic growth.
I'm just trying to figure out whether or not he's blown smoke up their booties,
Business in
or
the
if
US
he's
also is the
here.
best measure we can take to keep good actors in the system.
He's got to be on his best behavior. He's before Congress.
Regulations that encourage
Right, so
experimentation is critical to a vibrant entrepreneurial community. This committee's work is undeniably helpful in charting.
like Dan Tanashku from Lucy, he talks about things being regulated and blah, 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 but he's a full-on anarchist and does not believe in government
jobs.
Regulation whatsoever, but he does talk about that in his big conferences, is what he does.
Having said that, we are encouraged by
Big red candle on Mount Gox pushing Bitcoin below 700 suddenly bought up. Oh.
Respectful dialogue between key stakeholders will help ensure that the substantial benefits of the digital economy are met while mitigating many of the risks. In particular, we would like to thank FinCEN for opening up a dialogue with the Bitcoin community and for demonstrating leadership on this issue.
I think I might close out my Bitcoin and Buy back in at 200.
Hold!
Dialogue, and thanks the committee for allowing us to participate in this hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Mark. Mr. Allaire?
Chairman Carper, thank you for hearing my testimony this afternoon. My name is Jeremy Allaire, and I'm the founder and CEO of Circle Internet Financial, a recently launched financial services company aimed at facilitating payments and money transfers using global digital currencies, Bitcoin. I've been building internet software platforms and online services companies for 2 years, having founded and helped to lead multiple global companies with products used by hundreds of millions of consumers and hundreds of thousands of businesses globally. I'm here to testify because I believe that digital currency represents one of the most important technical and economic innovations of our time.
Yay!
Specifically, digital currency introduces advancements in electronic payments and money transfers, potentially materially.
Messed it up.
Oh man, he was going great. I thought he was going to be bashing Bitcoin because he has something to lose, but it seems like he sees that he has something to gain in Bitcoin.
World, decreasing fraud risk for consumers and merchants, increasing consumer privacy, and expanding the market for consumer financial products on a worldwide basis.
Yes.
This technology moves from early adopters into mainstream acceptance. It is critical that federal and state governments understand how Bitcoin fits into existing regulatory guidelines and how to apply them to digital currency. These should uphold consumer protections associated with fraud and privacy risks, ensure that criminals and bad actors find it increasingly difficult to utilize these platforms.
No more bad actors.
Tax clarity to consumers and businesses that conduct using digital currency. It's very clear that over the past 20 years, the internet has been at the center of global economic innovation. Open platforms have transformed communications, media, education, commerce, and retail. But for a variety of reasons, the technology and business models around finance has been insulated from similar.
Oh, for some reason. We just can't imagine what that reason could be. Not like government's in charge of it or anything.
Perhaps because of the shutdown of e-gold and Liberty Reserve, digital currencies weren't properly expanded.
That we've seen brought to bear on other industries. I don't think there's much.
We can't even have the conversation as to why we're still using fossil fuels to fuel our vehicles, and that.
Systems and processes that predate the internet.
People don't even want to acknowledge diesel,
Margins for business and less efficient economic interaction. And in many cases, our financial systems have excluded enormous bases of consumers who remain unbanked or underbanked. The combination of ubiquitous internet
underbanked,
and digital
underfed, undereducated, underserved, underbanked. That is the weirdest change to the English language recently. It's bizarre.
What do you think he means by underbanked?
Video format at no cost.
It hasn't been made easy enough for enough people to have access. Like they're underfed, they're not fed enough. They're undernourished, you're not nourished enough. Underbanked, you're not banked enough. People don't want to have a savings account where there's a negative savings rate. They don't want to keep their money in there when there's the threat that it can be confiscated. And yeah.
Well, unbanked I understand because that's like an actual measurement. Unbanked, and you don't have a bank account. Underbanked implies that there is some ideal amount of banking that you should be doing, and you're just not doing enough.
Right.
It's a value judgment. It's not a measurement.
I think they talk about underbanked communities, so it's easier. You can't talk about an underbanked person, but if you would expect like 90% of a community to have a bank account, and only 50% does, I guess they would be an underbanked community.
Much like people who are underserved
or under control.
Medical are people that are low income and high risk, and
state financial authorities. We're developing our platforms to provide
the community that I live in right now in Northeast Philadelphia, I would say is underbanked, and a lot of the people, whenever they receive a paycheck of any kind or check of any kind, they have to go to a check cashing place. They get pieces of their money stolen from them everywhere they go because they don't have a bank.
Well, as has been made amply clear,
they're not Americans, and so they shouldn't be able to get, those kinds of protections, Derek. Come on now.
currencies to finance criminal activities, including terrorism. But in addition to FinCEN's guidance and the appropriate requirement that Bitcoin operators Secrecy Act provisions,
They need to go back to Mexico.
doesn't support innovative companies gaining access to U.S. banking,
taking all our jobs,
companies offshore and overseas. Another risk that
Is this guy still talking? I mean, what does he really have to say?
from the IRS on
I believe they gave him 7 minutes, and he's going to take it all.
He's just
he's
like,
talking about the IRS though right now.
invaders. Without clear guidance on consumer protection,
can you turn him up, Thomas?
Yep.
consumers and businesses could be defrauded through inadequate systems and risk management procedures around customer funds.
I believe Google Plus does a suppressing of your volume whenever anyone else speaks, so it's my understanding that the volume does not need to be adjusted.
American companies from
I'll give it a shot.
and driving digital currency innovation. Indeed, today, a Bitcoin exchange in China has become the largest single trading exchange in the world.
Woo!
In Japan and Europe. We need to uphold and support our incredible history in America of supporting technical innovation and entrepreneurship. In terms of U.S. regulation, it appears to me that federal and state regulators seem to have ample statutory authority to adopt regulations and take enforcement actions as necessary to protect consumers and ensure responsible conduct in the world of Bitcoin.
So there are 2 out of the 7, 2 people are pro-Bitcoin.
We stand ready to assist them in their ongoing efforts to adapt to the
2 were like not pro and not against, and
I
the
believe
remaining 3, I suppose, are very.
internet-led transformation, this time in our global financial systems, and there's a real opportunity to foster that economic change while simultaneously putting in place the safeguards that only government can enable.
Ooh.
That concludes my prepared testimony.
Safeguards that only government
Thank you, sir. That was a very, very helpful testimony. Thanks.
can enable.
Guido, please proceed. Welcome. We're delighted that you're here.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for having me here today. We're here today to discuss virtual currencies in general, but it is Bitcoin in particular that has so many interested in this topic. But online virtual currencies are nothing new. For decades, from World of Warcraft Gold.
Can we move forward from all the historical examples and get to the damn point?
PayPal, Visa, Western
Yeah,
Union.
well, this is the first time I've heard about them mention World of Warcraft and virtual currencies that are like on gaming platforms. That's kind of
It is remarkable technical.
Well, I want to know
the world's first
who's Neo, because I want to be Trinity.
currency, and it's decentralized part of that sentence that is really unique.
We had Star Trek.
In 2009.
We're just gonna have all the
Well, why? So it's like they all had prepared statements. So this guy, he's just doing the. They're all going to do the background of Bitcoin, like, oh well, virtual currencies actually aren't new.
Ensuring that transactions between its customers were reconciled. However, by solving a long-standing conundrum in computer science known as the double spending problem.
It's so funny they don't have anyone from any Bitcoin business there, do they?
They have the Bitcoin Foundation there.
Between them.
Oh, I didn't see that. Have we seen that person?
Yeah, it was
Yeah, we have. He's a lawyer. I've never heard of him.
It was lawyer Patrick Merck, and this guy, Jerry Burrito, I've quoted him several times before. So
Which especially benefits small businesses.
from the Mercatus Center. What do we know about them?
Bitcoin is not a proprietary platform run by a single company.
it used to be a foreign policy type institute.
Entrepreneurs need no permission to experiment.
Hold on a second. Can you make that picture bigger of that man, please? It's talking right now.
Law enforcement has long relied on financial intermediaries to help them detect, prevent, and investigate illegal transactions. Because Bitcoin's transactions...
He looks like a man from the New York City Bitcoin group.
Transactions are not necessarily tied to identities. It is not surprising that we have seen Bitcoin employed in criminal transactions.
But it's not him.
Bitcoin has been used to move drugs and in malware that holds one state hostage. It's also not difficult to imagine how the technology could be employed in money laundering. Emerging technologies often present both great potential benefits as well as real risks. For example, 3D printing can be used to cheaply make prostheses and life-saving devices, but also undetectable firearms.
Oh, undetectable firearms are bad.
For shipping, but could also be used for stalking. The challenge for
Boo.
policymakers is to address the risk.
He may just be coaching his, like sort of buffering his testimony, because he said something really interesting a second ago. He said, because Bitcoin is not proprietary, no one needs permission to innovate in the Bitcoin sphere. And that's not something most statists will say.
Not require intermediaries. One must still acquire Bitcoins by exchanging dollars, and merchants that accept Bitcoins will very often use Bitcoin payment processors. Indeed, there's a fast-growing ecosystem of startup exchanges, payment processors, and wallet and escrow services that make up Bitcoin's burgeoning infrastructure. Each of these are already subject to regulation as money transmitters, including state licensing and FinCEN registration, as well as know your customer and suspicious activity report requirements. More to the point, serious criminals looking to hide their tracks are more likely to choose a centralized virtual currency run by an intermediary willing to lie to regulators for a fee, rather than
What does that sound like?
must make a record of every transaction, even if pseudonymously. While the online black market Silk Road, which used Bitcoins, is estimated to have generated less than $200 million in drug sales, the centralized digital currency Liberty Reserve is believed to have laundered more than $6 billion related to credit card fraud, identity theft, computer hacking, and child pornography.
Yeah, and think about all the crimes that have been committed with U.S. dollars.
The system of choice for criminals online is that it was designed and
The
managed
drug
by
deal was
state
completed
to
using
avoid
cash.
and reporting and to evade a subpoena. As a
Aided by the U.S. military at the behest of the commander-in-chief
Bitcoin's beneficial potential
as a result of
the network and its
deals made with Henry Kissinger.
developed by making sure that entrepreneurial innovators can easily comply with
Boy, he must be sweating. He's revealing a little too much truth in his statements.
or otherwise making it more costly to operate legitimately in this space could have two unintended consequences. First, it might mean ceding the network to exclusively illegal use and foregoing any visibility that law enforcement could otherwise gain into the activities of compliant firms. And second, the United States could lose its head in what may be the next breakthrough industry if it establishes a regulatory regime that hampers Bitcoin, while other countries, like China and Canada and Germany,
That's a good warning.
workable regulatory for Bitcoin. Finally,
You know what he just said? He said you put up too many regulations, and America will be behind the ball when foreign countries adopt Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Exactly. But instead, it's an open source project and a community. The Bitcoin Foundation is central to that community, but it does not encompass the whole community. So, as new guidelines and procedures are developed,
So I'm so glad that he's saying this, but really, what difference is it going to make when this bumbling Democrat from Delaware goes home and says, "Oh, okay, well they told me, we need to not regulate Bitcoin because other countries are going to take a bit are going to innovate ahead of us."
That's one of the first.
I mean, is anyone really going to listen to this guy, Tom Carper? Is he furious?
We were discussing an issue like this, around which there's not a great deal of consensus, is to use these.
The prices. Yeah, the prices.
And I thought we made a little progress there with the first panel, and I'm hopeful we can do that, replicate that.
Okay, and tune in and let's talk soon.
Toward that goal, let me just ask you to reflect on what you've heard from your colleagues on this panel.
Rob Messel says to say hello.
And
Hello.
Staff members that are here, whoever's watching on television here in the Capitol or at Capitol.
Or on the internet, it's like television.
Among the force, the perspectives you shared with us, the opinions that you shared with us, where do you think there's general agreement? Second question, where do you think there's not agreement? And about reconciling that lack of agreement. If we
I didn't understand those questions.
His question is, where do you think there's
Chairman Carper, I think there
where
is
there's not agreement?
agreement about the potential of a digital economy and virtual currencies. I think there is absolute agreement that there is enormous potential for social good, and that this is an emerging technology that needs.
That's refreshing to hear.
I also think there is clear agreement that we can't just ignore the misuse, and that the misuse
Why not?
of a digital
None of your business! Don't get involved.
The viability.
We must stop cash. Cash is causing problems.
So I don't think there is.
It's literally that ridiculous, Thomas.
As it relates to areas.
They wouldn't call in the CEO of the Center for Missing and Exploited Children
for basic
Chinese yuan because those are being traded for children.
The application.
Well, I'm sure a lot of kidnappers are paid in cash. He has the same arguments against cash.
Know your customer. Those.
That's true. That's a good point. That is a good point.
If there was no cash in the United States, there'd be no kidnapping of children, right?
Is how do we enforce?
I would be perfectly fine with federal regulators prohibiting the dollar.
And the fact that this truly is a global phenomenon. This is something.
Thank you.
The FinCEN guidance on this was just issued in March of this year. The FATF guidance that Director Jasky talked about, the Financial Action Task Force.
I wish someone could do I just am not technologically able to do a spreadsheet corresponding to the amount of money that this investigation is costing the taxpayers versus in correlation to
knowledge and about is really the issue that
what the upside potential is. There's no guarantee of a gain for them. It's only a loss here. There's no way for them to win.
If they save one life, Michelle, it's worth it.
Uh-oh. Come on, man.
Do we know anyone that does auto-tune the news videos? Because I imagine there's some great dialogue in this
Generally
hearing
disagree with.
that would make an entertaining auto-tune video.
Yeah, that would be really cool to see an auto-tune video.
I met that guy at a concert, and I acted like a fan and a nerdy fanboy and just worshipped him.
So that as those disagreements do crop up, and they likely will, we can address them quickly and in a safe and sane way. As to where we have to I think what I heard from the other panelists.
After we're done discussing this in a safe and sane way, we're going to reform drugs as well.
This Patrick Merck guy, you say you've quoted him, Thomas. I don't know where he's coming from. He's a co-founder of the Bitcoin Foundation. He's a lawyer, which makes
he's their lawyer. He's the Bitcoin Foundation's lawyer.
All right. I'm not anti-lawyer. It's just like, hey, it gets my
I am. Why aren't you anti-lawyer?
It gets my porcupine prickly quills going. So I have to be careful.
The banking system. There is currently a chill in the banking system and in the banking industry that is preventing businesses from getting just simple, even simple checking accounts.
Yeah.
Stories that if you have the word Bitcoin anywhere in your name or your documentations, you will immediately be, your application will be immediately placed in the circular file, as it will. So I think
blacklists are common throughout United States history.
Leadership.
Awesome.
Industry to make sure that these companies are into the traditional system where some of the protection.
It'll be easier for me to know who I want to hang with.
Illicit activity can be detected and rooted out.
Good, thank you, Mr. Outlet.
All the cool people are on the list.
I'd like to echo some of the other panel's comments. Clearly, there's consensus here around the innovation that we see, the potential for financial inclusion. I think there's consensus that many regulatory frameworks and tools are sufficient and being applied appropriately. I think there's consensus that the open nature of this technology, its development, its use, and its oversight is a very positive framework.
Yeah.
There is some tension around the question of the balance between anonymity and privacy, and whether there are new laws that are required to end the possibility of anonymity on the internet or to address that in some way.
Freedom.
And, as I stated in my comments, we are very focused within our business on having very deep levels of identity verification, and so we view that as critical. But others within the digital currency world, particularly within geographies that don't have the same kinds of regulatory regimes, may not. And are there other things that we need to be thinking about, other tools that we need to be thinking about for law enforcement that can address some of those issues. So I think that that arena needs additional and careful consideration.
All right, thank you. Ms. Rita?
So I think there certainly is broad consensus among the panel up here, and I was very heartened to hear the first panel's message, and I think we have a lot of consensus. I'll pick two issues just to give you an answer. At first, where is there agreement? I was very.
This guy looks like Clark Kent.
The gentleman from the Secret Service who said that, in fact, it is centralized currencies that pose the greatest risk as far as money laundering and other.
Yes!
Because of their nature, we're not a great.
I'll have what she's having.
Ms. Shasky sort of took issue with the idea that U.S. businesses might move overseas seeking a better regulatory environment. And,
did you hear him? He just said that it is actual, it's
lax regulatory treatment.
dollars that are going to be used for those heinous crimes.
The danger is not that somebody who's trying to facilitate an illicit business is going to leave the U.S. The danger is that real hardworking entrepreneurs who are looking to comply just don't find a regulatory environment that is amenable here.
Brain drain.
That's something that we don't want to allow us to stretch for too much time.
Well, thank goodness at least this panel can see straight.
Mr. Allen, I think...
Good, hardworking entrepreneurs who are looking to comply are going to leave the country. Aren't they looking not to comply?
No, but he makes a point about compliance with any of the regulations. If an entrepreneur wants to get into a new business, they have to consider compliance.
Yeah, and they stated that...
Yeah, okay.
And I mean, like, look at me, Dobby. Even if I wanted to comply right now, it would cost me, like, I can't go get just a job and give my social security number. For me to do that, I would go to jail. You know, I would have to fill out all those forms. So even if I want to say from here, starting now, I want to go by your rules. I want to do whatever. There's so much behind that makes compliance completely not cost beneficial at all on any level. And so for people that have been outside the system or are trying to get a foot in the door, small business owners trying to get in, it's
and has applied for money transmitter licenses in a couple.
Oh, are they going to start talking about bit licenses?
We'll just offer the first response.
Is this about bit licenses?
I think a business that is going to handle consumer funds, store and manage those, interact with the banking system should be comply with the rules that have been set forth through the banks to protect consumers and ensure that bad actors
Coinbase
operate. So I think in general we very much.
How are the consumers protected when 3 cents of every dollar that is collected from income taxes in this country goes to 9 different banks?
From our perspective, maybe different than other prior
that the banks got back in 2008. 3 cents of every dollar. How are consumers being protected right now? They're not.
To be able to build a financial services business and operate that without a sufficient investment to protect consumers and society. And so I do believe that the bar needs to be higher for financial services businesses in the United States.
Yeah, the bar's really not high enough for regulations of financial businesses in the U.S.
Like to see regulation which doesn't require that level of compliance. I don't think that's realistic. When I founded the company and sought capital to build this company, we understood that the bar was higher, and we raised sufficient capital to be able to launch our product and service in a compliant manner and hire the professionals and staff and put in place the systems.
We complied, so everyone else should. We jumped through the hula hoops.
Challenges.
So everyone else should. Now we love the hula hoops that were so difficult for us.
States the divergent approach.
No, but I do appreciate the point he's making because you know he's not someone, Derek, who's living his life outside the system as an anarchist and blah blah blah. So he's working within the system fine. So. I think what he's saying is there are already sufficient laws in place. There doesn't need to be any additional ones targeted for online currency.
It sounded a little Stockholm Syndrome-esque to me, in that he was saying like, oh, all of these barriers to entry are great.
to those.
I was bit by a rabid dog, so you should
and I
too.
think it is an appropriate use of the law, existing law, and I think it's a reasonable approach. I agree with him that one of the great challenges is creating consistency and uniformity because of our federal system and the fact that there could be different approaches.
It's not challenging to have uniformity. Hands off.
Thank you. Mr. Mark, any thoughts, please?
Yeah, the 50-state money transmitter license regime has come up.
License regime.
States have an interest in protecting their consumers. At the same time, it is a bit burdensome, and it has slowed down progress in the U.S. I don't know what the answer to that question is. I know in the EU they have a system of reciprocity where they have a minimum threshold for each country, and if you attain a license in one country, you can passport it to other countries as well. Perhaps that's
global Bitcoin licenses.
That would be best left to the.
Is that what's suggested by the Bitcoin Foundation lawyer?
Yes.
Well, he just said, you know, Europe is they're a pioneer in the realm of interstate licensing. So.
Virtual currencies.
Yeah, global governance.
He's a lawyer, so he wasn't suggesting it. He was articulating that it was an option.
And required to register with FinCEN if you are acquiring, say, Bitcoin in order to buy goods or services. But let's say, for example, that my mother's from Spain, and recently I helped her send money.
Is it possible to see the video bigger?
Of the total amount. What if I was buying Bitcoin?
See what, Derek?
To emit money overseas, as could be one of the great potential benefits to allow remittances to the third world.
Right there.
Countries. That is not covered by the FinCEN guidance. So I think the guidance could use further explanation, and I think if FinCEN were to put any further clarification up to public comment, they would, I think, get all this out.
Okay, thanks. May come back to you if I could.
Remit just means to send, right?
Your organization.
Overseas goes what it is like is implied there.
The forerunners.
They mean Western Union.
Private
or out of the country. You're going to send dollars to other countries, thereby devaluing this economy.
Who was involved in your working group, and why did you?
Mr. Chairman, we several years ago we had a very positive experience in bringing together financial industry leaders around the fact that the mainstream financial system, the mainstream payment system, credit cards, were being used for the purchase and distribution of child pornography. I called the chairman of a major credit card company and said, "How is this possible?" And he said, "We don't know what these transactions are for. If you can find for us, show for us where the merchant bank is, where the account resides. This is an illegal use of the payment system. We can stop the payments. We can shut down the accounts." So we brought together coalitions, America, Europe, and Asia, and had enormous positive impact. There was a dramatic decline. But as I began to talk to law enforcement and other leaders around the world, what we determined was that we didn't end it, we just moved it. And we were seeing evidence of a migration.
There's a lot of typing if you want to mute your mic.
Kinds of illegal operations.
Oh, I guess not. Don't mute.
The same model to bring private sector leaders together to try to develop shared common solutions. That's why we joined with Thomson Reuters to create this task force, and it includes the Bitcoin Foundation, it includes the Tor Project, it includes the Gates Foundation, and the Brookings Institution, Cato Institute, Vital Voices, a human rights group. It includes multiple law enforcement groups and representatives. The intent was people together better understand the problem and search for common ground. And so that's been our process.
At least this second panel, they seem to all have their hearts in the right place.
You've partly answered this question, but I want to ask it anyway. But just share with us a bit further what you've been able to learn from the dialogue that you facilitated, especially as it relates to the exploitation of children around the world.
I think we've really learned a lot in a short time. One of the challenges is most of the evidence is anecdotal because relatively few cases are actually being made. As we've talked to law enforcement, I talked about that earlier in terms of the apps.
Yeah, it's not like there was some explosion in child trafficking.
Things.
It really makes no sense why this guy's here.
That there is broad-based interest in searching for and finding reasonable solutions that work. We have learned, I think, as was pointed out earlier, that the digital economy is far broader than Bitcoin. So the issues we're focusing on are not just Bitcoin, but, for example, there are 22 million users today of Russia's web money. We've talked about Liberty Reserve and the case that was made there, $6 billion in illegal money laundering.
What's he talking about, Russia's web money?
Complex issue, but I think it's one that is addressable. And I think the most...
I believe Russia has a online currency that's used for shopping. Bitcoin recently interfaced with it, I believe.
That one of the biggest challenges for policymakers is simply to increase the level of awareness so that countries around the world will begin to use the tools they already have.
Well, that in part is the reason we're having this hearing. Oh, good. I was talking with a fellow who goes to the same church as we do back in Delaware the other day. He's in the auto business, sells a lot of cars. He has dealerships, sell a lot of cars in our state. And he was talking about the work of the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, established a couple of years ago, hopefully to look out for the interest of consumers throughout this country in a lot of different ways. But I want to focus just a little bit on consumers, if we could. And I've been told that virtual currencies pose a number of questions as to their use by consumers. And I have maybe two questions, but the first is, maybe you go down the panel or go up the panel. Mr. Vita, we'll start with you. And if you will, just give us some of your thoughts on whether virtual currencies have sufficient protections built in to them for consumers.
They have sufficient protections built into them for consumers.
Issues.
No, use your own head. Buyer beware.
To do anything to better protect.
Because I know that's what I like about all of the currencies of the past is that they had little protection mechanisms built right there into them. Like remember the fingerprint scanners on the gold coins in Rome.
This is very nascent.
Right.
They're still trying to find
Confederate dollars.
As a result, the folks who are at this point participating in this economy really have to try hard to participate in it. So these are not your average consumers just yet jumping in to this space.
But thanks for all the free publicity.
It gives regulators some time to more about the technology and learn more about what the industry players are doing to address these concerns and whether the existing consumer protection laws
I don't understand the price fluctuation between Bitstamp and Mt. Gox. I don't. That's a big difference.
It's because in Mt. Gox, you're not able. There's a problem with taking out U.S. dollars.
Payments.
So people buy Bitcoin to take out Bitcoin rather than take out U.S. dollars.
I see.
Sometimes
They seem to be the wild, wild west of traders. The most crazy traders are at Mt. Gox.
Have your identity stolen, or if something that you received is not what you ordered, you can always have a charge reversed.
Well, I think Mt. Gox is also more volatile for that reason, that they are not looking to take out U.S. dollars. They're
presents a new choice
for the wild trades. They're in it for volatility.
More expensive, or not insured, but less. That's a new choice for consumers that wasn't there before.
Okay, thank you. Ms. O'Leary?
I think there's many issues around consumer adoption of digital currency. I'll touch on a couple of them. We emphasize that Bitcoin as a digital currency offers great potential to lower the fraud risk that both consumers and merchants face on a day-to-day basis when we conduct payments. When we go into a restaurant and give our credit card out, or when we enter that information online, we're effectively giving out the keys to our bank account to every counterparty that we interact with.
Hear, hear.
So it should not be a surprise that we've seen dramatic growth in the amount of identity theft and specifically financial information, private financial information being stolen and sold on black markets and used for nefarious reasons. Protocols like Bitcoin reduce that risk because the keys to your bank account, the keys to your money are never transmitted. And that's one of the brilliant aspects of it. And so there's real potential to lower occurrences of financial fraud in consumer transactions and increase consumer privacy as a result. So I think those are really key benefits. But there are risks, clearly, for consumers. I think one risk, and this is one that we take very seriously as we look at this, is increasingly, because of ease of use, consumers that want to take advantage of things like Bitcoin are using online services that essentially host their Bitcoin on servers or on the internet. And because Bitcoin itself, the mechanism by which funds can be used is based on keys that we then in turn would store, there's a real risk around the security of funds. And we've seen occurrences just in the past weeks of startups who did not have appropriate levels of security around those funds, where those funds were effectively stolen. And so I think there's really critical requirements around the safeguarding of funds, the custodianship of these keys, and best practices and methods like that. I think industry is driving forward on that, but it's a key issue that the CFPB may take a look at. I think there's the flip sides, this question of what I would call merchant fraud, which is the chargeback scenario. You didn't get the product, you got products, someone had inappropriately used your account. I think that there are methods for addressing that within the technology of Bitcoin today and within improvements that are coming in updated, upcoming versions of Bitcoin, mechanisms to create refunds to consumers, mechanisms to provide greater transparency around what you're paying for, and there are mechanisms even that are not well understood, I think generally, but which will become available, where funds can be held in escrow until a product has been delivered to a consumer. So there are ways to address some of that merchant fraud risk as well, and I think you're going to see industry participants pushing forward on that.
I'm seeing a severe drop in the price on Mt. Gox, or is that BTC China?
This is BTC China, and you can see they're starting to buy back in right here, the green line.
I'll reserve my comments strictly to Bitcoin, centralized currencies. When you look at Bitcoin especially, we haven't even released version 0.9, so we're not on version 1.0. Very much still an experimental currency, and it should be considered a high-risk environment for consumers and investors.
That's right.
At the moment. That's changing over time.
If he had said beta, I would have had bingo.
Others are coming into the space and building the service layers on top of the Bitcoin protocol to make it safer for consumers to move in. Those service layers are both technological. Bitcoin is referred to as programmable money, so you can build in layers of escrow and dispute mediation and things like that right into your payment structure, which is a very interesting concept, as most of the laws that exist for consumer protection in the payment space were built around traditional methods where those weren't possible. So potentially you don't need
so it's like new and improved.
In the long term to the midterm as this system.
Oh man, I'm not in full screen here. Come on, C-SPAN.
Grows up. In the short term, consumers should be aware that this is a high-risk environment and that potentially it's not quite ready for mass consumer adoption today. That time is coming, but it's not here yet.
Thank you. Mr. Allen?
The other panelists...
That was the best answer so far.
Much to add, other than to say, one of the groups we met with on this were central bankers and financial industry leaders, and they clearly view, as I think the other panelists do, virtual currencies as akin to cash. So there is no FDIC. There is that not that level of protection. So I think it has to be viewed as high risk, and I think the points that the other panelists made about the fact that
are they going to get licenses? That's what I want to know. Are they going to start saying, okay, we got to issue bit licenses now, and they're going to be global?
Staff.
You just got to let consumers decide their own level of risk tolerance. I mean, like this is Caveat emptor at its most basic.
And I'm told that the protocol was developed either by maybe a programmer or by a group of programmers that go by the name, I think it's Satoshi Nakamoto. Okay. And
that is going to be part of the
auto-tune.
To Bitcoin, it just seems strange
Satoshi
that this individual would choose to remain anonymous. What do we know about this person? What do we know?
Just to remain anonymous, though. I mean,
what do we know about this guy? What do we know about him?
This person's anonymous. What do we know about him? Nothing. They're anonymous.
How about this person's name is, this person is anonymous?
Laughing at him.
That one for everybody. Satoshi Nakamoto is the pseudonym for the creator of creators, he, she, they.
Why does he wear the mask?
Bitcoin protocol and released the original the spec for the Bitcoin protocol into the world, in addition to the original code base that was then open sourced to the entire community. This person or group of people has...
he's sitting at home watching this, drinking a beer.
Can you turn him up just a little bit while he explains this?
From that original code has already been rewritten. While I think everybody is grateful for that incredible contribution, at this moment in time, who Satoshi is largely irrelevant to the story of Bitcoin going forward. And I think that was intentional, and possibly why it was chosen in the first place.
All right. Anybody else?
I just want to. It is a little strange. Bitcoin, we don't know who the creator is, and so that often.
That guy is Superman.
There's some risk.
I know it.
Have not.
You don't think it was Al Gore, do you?
Oh.
An Al Gore joke.
No, denied it.
Dude, and people say I should be more serious.
But I think the key thing to emphasize is that Bitcoin...
No, I think Bitcoin was invented by Grover Norquist.
What was the Al Gore joke? I missed it.
He says you don't think Al Gore invented it, do you?
This thing's full of great jokes. It's going to be lots of fun tomorrow.
More than half of the code base has been written by others.
See, that's what Bitcoin is. It's a series of tubes.
I'm pretty confident that
We're start voting over in the Capitol.
Thank you, Doug.
I think we'll wrap it up by. I just want to say, I love to quote Albert Einstein. Not all my colleagues do, but he said some.
That's a nice sentiment.
One of the things he said: adversity lies opportunity. In adversity lies opportunity. God knows there's plenty of adversity with respect to these virtual currencies that we've talked about. It's not just potential. It's not just possible. It's real. And we need to be not just mindful of that, but vigilant to make sure that we contain it and eliminate it where we can.
We gotta can it. Eliminate it.
He took that beautiful quote, turned it on its head, and said
something relates to my efforts to try to get my head around
completely contrary to the intent of the code.
In Bitcoin, Mrs. Einstein, who probably was quite brilliant in her own right.
When your only tool's a hammer, Michelle.
Was asked if she understood her husband's theory of relativity, and she allegedly responded, "I understand the words, but not the sentences." How about that? I understand the words, but not the sentences.
Sad.
Trying to understand what this was all about. I sort of felt like Mrs. Einstein, and said, I understand the words, but not the sentences.
Resign.
They kept it so simple for you, dude.
All of you on the second panel, and with the help of my staff.
And the book had no pictures.
Briefest, I'm starting to understand more than just the words. And that's really why we wanted to hold this hearing today.
Yeah, we're going to need to have a second panel.
Here.
This is a good first panel.
Come from this technology.
They already explained everything to them. What could they possibly have in the second panel?
Consumers into businesses.
You know what I think would be great is to write to this man, Senator Tom Carper, and suggest that he interview instead for his panel Bitcoin meetup organizers and Bitcoin startup
people who are actually using it.
Yeah.
I think he should interview the Bitcoin group.
It's 5:30.
We should have. He should interview the Bitcoin group. We should invite him on the show.
Someday they'll thank me for you, I hope. But there's a rather
I agree with that.
responsibility here in trying to figure out how to make this work, so that we minimize the bad that can flow from it and maximize the
It sounds like okay, like is it just me or is it the speakers on the computer or something? But it sounds like his voice has been run through gravel.
It sounds like Vogon poetry. That's what it sounds like.
December 3rd at 5 p.m.
Sounds beaten up and tired.
I mean, he started his meeting at 3 p.m. It's 5:30. Is he that worn out? So tough listening to these
Like
people.
he said, you know, he understands the words but not the sentences. His brain is fried.
And for you and this panel for joining.
Boy.
Which I mean, let's okay. So great. So applaud him for having the conversation. Great.
I do.
And
Yes.
then also, you know, for someone who's been in a box where the narrative has been, you know, it's waking up is painful. And so we have to be merciful, you know. I mean, whether it's a butterfly emerging from a cocoon or waking up from a coma, it is really, really painful. And it's fine for us to laugh at them and go, ha-ha, but, you know, I think it's an opportunity that if we show compassion, and that we'll have a better chance of winning people over.
What price did we end on, Thomas?
We're at in BTC China we're at $842. Mt. Gox $713. So that would be up.
I'm going with the 617 Bitstamp. I like Bitstamp.
Yeah, I'm gonna take Bitstamp a little. That's what I've been following for the last little while. But you make a great point, Thomas. It looks like China's the one doing most of the driving of the prices upward. And that's going to have an effect on Bitstamp and the other exchanges eventually.
It's an impressive and interesting range to see them at 600, 700, 800. That's an incredible amount of disparity, but if we take it back, let's think more about 60, 70, and 80. They're not that far apart.
But I mean, I don't know if you heard the question that I posed to Derek, and Davi answered a little bit, and that is that I know different exchanges have their fees incorporated into the price, whereas some others don't. Could that potentially be what is making the price in BTC China as high as it is because they're limited or not in the exchange they're able to use?
I doubt it would account for a price disparity in the hundreds.
Well, BTC China also has the benefit of not having any fees right now. So if you were looking to use an exchange in China, there are no fees until, I believe it's till the end of the Chinese national holiday, which I'm not very familiar with. But it's currently fee-less. So as for the other ones, I mean, obviously Mt. Gox has the problem where you can't get your dollars out. I think that's created a unique trading environment of pro-Bitcoin people pushing the price up. Bitstamp, I don't know very much about. BTCE has that troll box, which is, I think, a very strange feature where wrong ideas get promoted so that people can buy or sell based upon the wrong ideas. It's a very strange exchange.
But it does seem to be the one that has the highest volume. At least today, I see the volume is at 43% coming from BTCE.
If dollars can't be taken out, in what sense is it being traded for dollars?
They have a holding account where you could hold your money instead of like selling back to your bank account where it would be USD on Mt. Gox, but then it's trapped there. So if you thought Bitcoin was going to crash, you'd put your money into your holding account, you'd wait for it to crash, and you'd buy back in. But then when you try to transfer your money out, you pay more.
So those dollars are just trapped in the Mt. Gox system. They're not some. So well, then that might.
No. It's actually acting like a regular brokerage account. So basically, you're sitting flat on that or neutral. So whereas like if you use Coinbase and you go from your blockchain info wallet to Coinbase to your bank account, you're not having to use that Coinbase part, so you can actually take your position off and be flat or neutral, and so then it saves you that step, and if there's a round trip fee on the transfer from there to Coinbase and back, then you're not having to pay that. So it is like if I were trading full time and there was enough volume here that I was trading interactive throughout the day, I would definitely use Mt. Gox, according to what you just said.
And many people do. The biggest thing for me today is that the government, the federal government, thought that it was a good idea to have this meeting. Of course, there is no federal government, can't do any thinking, but the individuals who inhabit those buildings, they thought it was important enough to spend the time putting people in front of cameras and grilling them with relatively softball questions about Bitcoin. I think it's just the beginning of many hearings on the topic, and I thank you all so much for being willing to join in this commentary, this first ever commentary. I thought it was amazing.
It went great. We've
I
got
wish
a.
that I could dress up like you all. You all look so handsome. You're so dressy. I'm in my post-sweat, like nasty, but I was so excited to see y'all and to be a part of this, so thanks for including me.
I'm glad you came on. I've got my shiny badges pin on.
Yeah.
Nice.
That you can get your own at shinybadges.com. So yeah, I just wanted to thank everyone. Looks like we'll be editing these videos together to make one solid compilation and take out any mistakes. So hopefully we'll have a good, clean video that will be age appropriate for all audiences.
Derek, do you want us to stay on the air here? Are you ready to sign off here?
I'm going to sign off. I thank you all for joining.
Right.
I think this was a huge success.
All right.
I'll talk to you post Bitcoin meeting tomorrow night.
Okay, great. Cheers.